5 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to the October 24th, 2023 Policy and Governance meeting. First order of business, can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the September 26th meeting?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Great. Moving on to policy review, 200 series. We discussed these at our last B&G meeting and as well as at the board table, last couple of regular meetings. We've incorporated the code of ethics into these, and it's really the only change that we have, so I'll just open it up if there's any discussion.
Go ahead.
Did you know?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I have a couple of things that I want to run through. Thank you, Kim, for getting us all of the documents. That was super helpful for me to be able to go through and kind of look at what we had and what IASB recommends and then what the proposals are. And I just want to go through some, prefacing that, it's probably a little nitpicky. But as a lawyer, and especially because I do a lot of statutory interpretation and constitutional law, it's so important to me that we get all of the language right. And so starting on the first page, B as in boy, I noticed that the other versions, the IASB and our prior one, said listen and respect the opinions of others. And I was wondering why listen and was left out, and if it's inadvertent, if we could put it back in, because it seems that those concepts kind of go hand in hand.
I don't think I removed the word, so I
Must have been a
it
draft.
must have
It
been a
didn't
draft
have it in it.
version. Yeah.
And then my next question was down on G. I saw that G, in that same subsection, I saw that G seemed to be pulled out of option 2 of the IASB, drafts, subsection 6, and that's the closed session 1. The IASB recommendation has additional language in it after there's a comment that says, but I will consider, quote, star chamber, unquote, or, quote, secret, unquote, sessions of board members unethical. I don't know what a star chamber is, so I understand why maybe we didn't, but I think we all know what a secret meeting is. And I wondered if we left that language out on purpose. It seems like, my perspective is when people are going to try to go back and look at our intent, they're going to pay attention to the decisions that we made to follow the model, but also the decisions that we made to not follow the model. And that when we leave things out, some people may think that that's intentional. And I don't want them to think that we intentionally are somehow tacitly approving secret meetings, since the model says that we don't believe in secret meetings. And so I'm wondering if we can add that language, but I will consider secret sessions of board members unethical to section G.
I did not remove that language. I think if it was removed, it might have just been because we didn't understand. Star chamber,
I think I removed it because I thought it was superfluous
Yeah,
and silly language,
yeah.
but I don't care. If you want to put it back in, I don't care.
Yeah, I just think it's
Secret
important.
meetings seem silly to me.
Yeah, I think it's important to signal to the public, though, that we aren't having secret meetings, that we consider secret meetings unethical, especially, even in the past, year, I think this board has been accused of deliberating outside of the board table in secret, and we had a formal complaint filed against us, and I think it's important to signal that we consider that unethical, given, especially in light of that history.
I'm fine putting that back in.
It was an English court that sat at the Royal Palace of Westminster. Looks like it subverted the judicial system in England at the
No,
time.
that's the
Star
Star
Chamber.
Chamber.
Star Chamber.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
That was a random drop in.
Yeah, I was like, oh, wow, we've got some competition.
You're welcome.
That was quick and non-second one. Okay.
Then next was subsection I. I recognize that the authority rests with the board as opposed to any individual member thereof. I noticed that our old code of ethics, as well as both recommendations from IASB, has an exemption in the language that says, except as authorized by law. And I wondered why we are removing that from subsection I.
I don't know why that's not there.
Sounds like you got it.
Yep.
Done. Kim, are you taking notes of these changes or should we be doing
Nope, I
this
got
at
it.
the time? Thank you.
I got it, yep.
Then, one of the ones that I liked from I guess I'll go to N first. That's not discuss the confidential of the board with anyone other than authorized persons, including but not limited to who, the administrative team or other board members. And I had pulled our old language. I know it's a little, that language is a little modified from the IASB language. And I wondered why we were modifying it, why we wanted to walk away from the IASB proposed language and our old language on that one.
I would say if I made any changes and I don't have them memorized, it was to make it better for wording purposes, because I tend to take words out. But if you want to tell us what's missing, that'd be helpful. Because there was nothing like sneaky about removing words, it was literally to make them more readable. So I don't remember what I might have struck.
Well, so like our old code of ethics, it's a little hinky because they were will statements, and we're not adopting the will statements, which I actually like it without the will statements. I think that makes more sense. But the will statement was, will respect confidentiality when required by law, which I actually think is a little less wordy than this current language.
Do you have a proposal that you'd like us to?
Will respect confidentiality, or not discuss confidential business of the board when required by law.
What?
So instead of not discuss the confidential business of the board with anyone other than the authorized, instead of saying all that, just say not discuss the confidential business of the board when required by law. So when the law says that we can't discuss the confidential business, we don't discuss confidential business. We follow our legal obligations not to do that.
This didn't come from this
Yeah.
came from a source, not us.
Yeah. that
So,
was
but
not
I think
us.
I
That's
think-
fine with me.
Yeah, if you do, but I do think it's nice to spell it out too, about who you can, because people don't know the law. It's not cited, like there's no code section telling you that, so I thought it made sense to use this more like layperson friendly language. Again, not my hill to die on, so if everybody thinks we just say by law, that's fine with me.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Either way.
Then with respect to O, which was the orientation on onboarding procedures, I like it. I'm just not sure it's necessarily an ethical duty. To me, it seems more of like a promise that we make to future board members. And so I was wondering, I looked at policy 216.2, which talks a little bit about board members' duties to attend the conference, educate themselves, know what's going on. And I wondered if it would be better if we kind of did a redo of 216. It's Board of Directors member, the title of 216 is Board of Directors Member Development and Training. And so, to me, orientation and onboarding is about development and training of new board members. And so I wonder if it makes more sense to house that there. That's going to require a little bit more massaging of that policy, but not having it be in the ethics, the code of ethics section.
I get what you're saying there. I think that's a good change. I do think it would be nice to say, to have something in our code of ethics that says that we will, as board members, we will mentor new board members in their orientation.
Yeah.
That we commit to that.
I like,
Yeah.
that makes more sense as an ethic, like that all of the board members are responsible for mentoring new board members. I like that, Jamie. This read to me more like onboarding policy and procedure, which from what I recall is something that the admin team does. Looking at the admin team. I remember when I came on, I sat
We
in
did
the
some,
conference
yeah.
room and there was binders and we went through it all. Not what we, so
I
maybe.
think, you know, look, speaking for myself, and I think Director Cooper Hyatt
I said so.
shares the same opinion that that the onboarding procedure needs to be a little bit more robust. I think we felt like, yeah, and so that was the impetus for putting that in here. But if you want to put it somewhere else and
I think we could
you know,
really
change that, but
do some nice work with 216.
the message
Yeah.
is the same, that we feel that process needs to be more robust.
Yeah, and I think that we could really put some legs and make it even more robust than this inside of 216, right? Like kind of lay that out, and then also say, you know, not only do you have a does the district and the new board member have a responsibility to go through onboarding and some initial training, but then you have an obligation to do these, hopefully these other things, which is participate in conferences, work with IASB, encourage you to participate and achieve the Better Boardsman Award, you know, kind of laying out what it means to be a good board member initially and then subsequently during your term.
Does anybody have any comments on that?
No, it's fine.
So then another one that I thought was missing that was both in our old code of ethics as well as the model, the IASB model, was, again, it's a will statement, but will abide by the oath of office, federal law, and state law. And I think that's an important one to have
Put it
in
in.
there.
It just wasn't in the draft.
So it's going in where?
I think it's in the first section.
So going after Q,
Yeah, it would be R.
okay.
Another one that was in the model policy and our old code of ethics that didn't make it into this one was board members, and it's kind of there, but board members will express honest and thoughtful opinions in board meetings in an effort to have decisions made for the best interest of the children and education program. And again, that one, we kind of get there, but I thought that expressing honest and thoughtful opinions was important language to have in our code of ethics.
But my only question is, with that word honest, who's defining it? I
Well-
mean, is it my honest or your honest? I mean, so that's one of my issue with that word, because I mean, I can sit here and say it's snowing outside and truly believe that. That's my honest.
Yeah, I think,
Don't look at me like that, Chase. I'm just saying, I mean,
to me, it implies some sort of good faith, right? That you didn't go talk to other people in the community and then come into the boardroom and say something different, or you're not trying to play gotcha, or, I mean, it means that you are having a good faith, honest discussion when we discuss these things, that you're doing so in good faith.
right, good faith. the honest part, I think, is the piece that I struggle with, because you can't, what I believe to be the truth may not be, of a situation, may not be what you believe to be the truth of a situation.
So would you feel good with good faith then,
Yeah.
instead of honest?
Yeah.
Yeah. So board members will express good faith and thoughtful opinions in board meetings in an effort to have decisions made for the best interest of the children and education program.
Yeah.
Then moving on, and then P, avoid involving the superintendent in board conflicts which, if not resolved directly, should be addressed by the president of the board. You know, I wonder too if we need to think about a change to 206.1, which are the duties of the board. If we're going to say that the duties of the president of the board, if we're going to say that the president is responsible for addressing board conflict, I think we need to add that into their express duties in that policy section.
Okay.
These just got moved here because they fell off the map after the first draft of the norms that got trashed. So we're just kind of pulled stuff out that we still thought was important. I think it's better suited in that section you just cited.
Because it seems like,
It's an obligation of the president.
yeah, because when I'm like, who's responsible for what? Those are the policies that I go to.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay.
And then, all right, so then in the second part, in meeting my responsibilities to the school district, kind of part 2, subsection C, I noticed we are changing to values and priorities where the model language references needs and attitudes, and I was wondering what the thought was behind that
We thought
modification.
those words were more reflective. Attitudes, I thought that was an odd word to use, and I thought values was a better word.
Yeah. That was a change.
That
we
was
did.
a change that we consciously made, because we just thought that those were better words.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then, everything else on that, and then the third, I didn't have any questions. And then in the last section, I wanted to ask kind of Chase and Matt, subsection A, we say not employ any personnel who are already under contract. The IASB model language says, limits it to superintendents, principals, or teachers. And I didn't know if IASB did that specifically because when we look at paras and nutrition staff and kind of other people, phys plant guys and whoever, if there's something different with how those contracts, I don't want us to step in it by making the language broader than what
That's a good point.
IASB recommends.
We did not change this. Again, this might have just been language that Linmar changed, and,
Okay.
yeah.
Then what I would propose is we use the IASB that says superintendent, principal, or teacher.
Fine.
I think that's it. Yes, those were my notes. So I'm done.
So, are we able to approve these with the
I was
changes?
gonna say,
that we-
can I say at the board table for the action item, accept the 200 series with the changes discussed at policy
P&G.
governance? Yeah, because
Mhm.
then, those changes are on record.
They'll be
And then we
captured in
just
those minutes,
add-
yep.
Exactly,
And that includes the moving of certain
yes,
provisions
so it'll be
per
all edits.
Lisa's recommendation.
I think that's the.
So in other words, not just the ones to that section, but the ones where you moved stuff,
Right.
those sections will
Yeah.
also change, but there are 200s.
Yep,
And I think what I'd love to maybe see us do in P&G is still approve it all, but then circle back to that 216 about the onboarding and take a kind of like a deep dive in the next month or two on just that. I know that we're gonna approve
come
it,
back to it.
but come back to it and
Sure.
really
Okay.
flush it out and get some good language. I think we may wanna do like some subheadings and just kind of make the structure of it more clear as to what we're trying to accomplish in that
I did,
section.
I mentioned to you all that I deep dived into onboarding procedures. I drafted something, and finished a draft of it today. I asked Matt for certain things he might repeatedly have to train people, you know, the kind of issues that come up, and it would be nice to have it in a document. So I did just send it to those two because I just finished it and it's not proofread. If you have things to add, I didn't hear from anyone else about any suggestions about what you might want to include. But I think that per what you're saying, Lisa, is if we do make it sort of like the admin team does this, and then it did help though to have a board member say, this is what I wish I knew. So like between the two of the admin team represented and board represented, I feel like we got a pretty good document prepared. But of course, it's still a draft.
And you know what I think we can do too, right, is if, when that gets out of draft and is final, we could list it on the cross-reference to that policy so that we don't have to include the whole draft in
Yeah.
the policy.
Oh yeah, you won't want to include the
Yeah.
whole draft. It's
But-
about 15 hours of work.
Yeah, but then it's referenced in the policy so that people know, hey, we're supposed to look at this
Yeah,
document.
good.
Yeah.
So once it is out of draft, I'll make sure everybody has it. The only reason you don't is because I have not proofread it. Okay,
Thank you, Lisa, I think those are very good changes.
yeah.
So, I have a couple of questions about section 208G1. We'll do that now, or
What section, Charlie, I'm sorry?
208G1,
208G1.
advisory committee.
Got it.
And what I'm looking for some clarity on is that this section describes advisory committees as appointed as opposed to ad hoc committees. And I assume then that this section would affect the equity committee if we adopt it. Am I correct in that assumption?
I did look at our committee assignments as part of the onboarding document, and it is listed separately, so just along with your question, I'd add on that there's advisory committees, and there are something under that, and then the equity advisory committee is different. So I would like to just understand that too, because I have no idea.
Okay. Well, and I'm thinking, if this section it does start to apply to the equity committee, it changes several things in the equity, in the structure of the committee that have not been there before, including terms of office, who the committee reports to, this initiatives it was intended.
Yeah, the inception of the Equity Advisory Committee would have been before this policy, and I think the origination of this policy came from an attempt to try to clean up all of the different committees that were happening in the district. So I don't think that the passage of this policy would negate what's going on with the Equity Advisory Committee, but I do think there probably should be some reconciliation of the two, right? I mean, I think that's gonna be a thing, because there's some bylaws that guide that work. I don't think by passing this, we should just dissolve those and follow this, but I do think we probably need to bring those things together so they work in concert. So I think that's probably some additional work to do, Charlie.
Okay.
Because, I mean, my reading of this is that, yes, this governs all of our advisory committees.
That's what I
Not,
was
like,
reading.
equity wouldn't be different. I mean, we would want, I would, as a board member,
It should,
want
yeah.
equity committee to follow some of these, especially like term limits, because we want to make sure that, you know, we're getting different people and different voices to the table to share their thoughts and not just Mitch McConnell sitting up in there.
I think we would want that. I just think to be respectful to them and
Yeah.
what they've done, right, is that's why we
Right.
want to take that step. So I
No,
think
and
we're
I'm not
saying the
saying
same
like,
thing.
you know,
Yeah,
go in and say,
yeah,
Bob, you've been on the committee now for 6 years, and
Right.
you just adopted this, you gotta go. No, it would be like, okay, we're right, grandfathered in, but everybody start the clock sort of at the same time or something.
because this, I think, does address some problems we would have seen in some of those advisory committees, that there wasn't rotating membership or there wasn't term limits for those things. So I do think it could help inform a process there, but I think we want to take probably those existing bylaws from that, look at what we have with this, and then probably present something back around the Equity Advisory Committee that Laura and her team have worked through.
Well, I mean, this did come up while I was on the advisory committee, and there were members I had to leave.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
We went through that.
But I think that was due to the Equity Advisory Committee bylaws, not because of this specific policy. Is that correct?
That's my remembrance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always been an outlier, the
Yeah.
equity committee, with the fact that they have bylaws, the fact that they take minutes, they sort of follow a structure that most committees don't. And the term limit thing came up where, and it's sort of a, I mean, you don't want to say no to anybody who wants to do that work, but you need more voices, but it's not always easy to find folks, or it hasn't always been easy to find enough people who want to do, or, you know, who have the time and effort to.
Or they think they want to do it, and they get on and they realize how long and arduous the meetings are, and realize it's just
Indeed,
not, yeah,
they're the longest
yeah.
of the meetings.
This, there's provision here also that says that the advisory committees will require a superintendent directive that outlines their duties and purpose, which would be different, a different process that the equity committee has followed in the past for defining its duties and purpose. So I'm not opposed to making that a superintendent responsibility.
What we could, to fix that, Charlie, we could say shall require the superintendent or their designee. Because then that way it covers if it's Matt or somebody under Matt.
That he designates.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
Like the equity coordinator, or, I mean, I'm assuming Laura is the point person, right? So Matt would designate, okay, this is your umbrella.
So do we need to just understand, it doesn't sound like we can go through all of this right now. So is the plan to put the two things next to each other, figure out what things, so that's gonna take some review that we're not getting done right now. But it needs to be done, little asterisk on this one?
Right, I think that's the follow-up work. I mean,
Okay.
Chase and I are kind of sidebarring over here. I mean, this policy isn't new, right? We've had this policy. I think what we've identified is a new step in the work to bring something that's also been in existence in the district into alignment with the policy. So we'll work to do that and then bring you guys the plan back.
Okay.
Good call, Charlie.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we can move on to 300s then. Does anyone have any comments, additions, deletions?
Did the admin team want to bring anything to our attention other than what's highlighted? I mean, is there anything interesting? It didn't look very exciting, your changes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, nothing, and that's mostly my work, and nothing that's really, like you said, real interesting, just more to fit the model that we have in our organization. We're not a one-person shop at central office, and so no reason, we talked about to make everything be on one person's shoulders, so it's just make it more reflective. It's not just our principals at the buildings, right? Our directors also help direct that. They had a definition of what administrators was, I think, in a labor policy, and so just making sure that's accurate to reflect administrators throughout the entire piece. And then, of course, we just have some reporting structures already in place. They give some facility examples. Well, we don't want them calling that. We want them to call the physical plan first to make sure they're on top of it. When there's a student concern, we want them calling in. So just making sure that the policies reflect our actual processes and procedures, and also to free the superintendent up to do some of those other things other than day-to-day tasks that we have other folks to do.
I would just note that we had the 302 5.5G1 is the superintendent evaluation process, where it provides the timeline,
That was what I was gonna bring up as well, yeah, the October, February thing. right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
which I mean, I've only been on the board for 2 years, but both years we were like, oh, we gotta follow the timeline.
Because I think after the negotiation of the something like, oh my God, I don't want to look at that again. And be like, oh, yeah, we're gonna follow that. But yeah.
So just to remind us, that's the timeline, everybody.
That may be true for all of the years.
Okay,
I,
well, why?
Yeah.
I think the truth is you just get caught up in the work and then it just doesn't, I don't know if it's a,
I know, but we gotta do it.
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm saying. It's a policy. If you don't wanna do it, then let's not have it in there.
I seem to recall what happens, right, is June, now school's not even over until June 5th. And so a lot of it has just been like, the busyness that happens with winding school down and graduate, that's why we usually get to it at the very end of June or
Yeah.
July. And I
But-
wonder, does it make more sense instead of June to say July? I need to change that month, just to recognize that.
But I think what the touch points
Yes.
are the points that, I mean, to be fair, and Matt, you could tell me to shut up.
You're okay.
To be fair to a super, to have touch points, so
Yeah.
that way we're not waiting to the end to say, you sucked at X, Y, and Z as a board, and we're telling you this. But I think even if it's not the 2 touch points, it has to be one at least 6 months into the contract.
Well, yes, and I agree wholeheartedly with that, and I don't think we should change that at all, right? There should be a mid-year email. But it's just.
I don't
and-
think
and
you want to change the
June to July.
June to
okay.
July because of the way the
People are
fiscal
not-
year
Exactly.
works and the
Okay.
contract, the way it's structured, it starts July 1. So you
Okay.
want to be able to do that final work in June to make a decision before July, right, about
Sure.
contract
Yeah, that
decision.
makes
But
sense.
like Ruthina talked about, if you had unsatisfactory performance and you want to discuss those concerns, you should be doing something prior to the June conversation, right?
Would it-
So,
would it help if we, I mean, because it gets forgotten almost all of the time. A subcommittee that we put a meeting on the calendar and that's your job to like get together and say, hey, do we need to bring? I mean, I'm just thinking, what's a way that we can make, because I'm pretty sure I know what happens. The school year just goes and there's a million things. And when we're sitting here in agenda setting, we never say, oh yeah, mid-year superintendent, you got a touch point. I don't know.
What if, instead of a subcommittee, and like, don't kill me, what if we added it as a bullet to the duties of the president?
And I was gonna say that it needs to be spelled out that this is the president and superintendent responsibility. Because in order to have that conversation, somebody has to ask for a closed session to discuss their performance. So,
And maybe having it built in that policy section is just another reminder of like, these are the
This is
6
what
things
has
the
to
president
happen.
is supposed to do, and that's the person who's responsible for doing it, instead of all of us collectively missing.
And it can be tickled on the calendar.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like all things can be. So I don't think we have to come up with it.
yeah, I mean, I think that's a good step, right? We identify the goals for the year in June when we meet, and then at some point there should be a check-in to say, okay, well, what have we done to work on these goals? Where are you at? You know, whatever that structure is, or, you know, full one person, a subcommittee. I mean, there should be some kind of a midpoint check-in. It seems like we're reviewing those goals and progress on those goals before we get to the end of the year eval again, right? So,
But so back to what you were saying about, I understand we keep June. I just need to understand what is the month that makes sense to do that. Is it October though?
no,
No,
I
I think
would
it's
think
not,
it's
is it?
January.
January.
I would
Yeah,
think it's
I think
January.
After the holidays.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
October's too soon.
October is way too soon,
Okay.
that's why we don't do.
And nothing happened.
Yeah, no, but I think January is a good touch point.
Okay, so we need to change it.
So it should be just,
so you could just put in January,
Right.
keep the bullet,
Yeah.
Right.
and then get rid of the second bullet in the second
Exactly.
month, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing in the 300 series is not really reflective of our practices is on page 34, 303.7, and that is In the case of overnight travel and expense, the superintendent will bring it to the attention of the board prior for approval, which I don't believe that's our practice. So I don't know if we want to change that wording in our policy or change our practice.
Okay. Prior to attendance. I would think we want to read the policy, not change our practice. I don't feel like we need to have prior notice.
Yeah, I don't need to know every time Chase goes to a conference.
No, it's for the
Just
superintendent,
for
not,
Matt.
because Chase would have to tell Matt. What they're saying is Matt, what the policy says, Matt is supposed to be telling us about his overnight travel.
No, it's not,
I
it's
think it's
for any
broader.
administrator.
Oh,
Yeah,
It's for any
it's
administrator.
any overnight, I think it's any
Okay.
overnight travel.
303.
That's why I don't need to know, yeah,
Right,
that's how
but
I
I'm
read
just
it.
saying, like, then let's change the language.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Could we just say in the case where unusual expenses involved?
yeah. Because I think we would like to know if it's an unusual expense, right?
Listen, everybody feels good right now about the superintendent, but this is gonna last.
Yeah.
So like, what if we got a goofball? And he does do some stuff, he should travel, he or she does. And I'll tell you what, that's happened, not with this superintendent.
There are
And-
reasons it's here.
Yeah, so like, I'm okay with maybe taking out some of that language, but if you wanna put in like the unusual word, I don't know, what do you think? Unusual is so hard to
Do
explain.
we-
is.
Do
Exactly.
we want to have a dollar threshold? Like, travel exceeding X amount of money, we'll find out about?
That would be typical for,
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
so what do you think the dollar threshold would be, administrators that travel on our dime?
Well,
That would be unusual,
Yeah,
that we
like-
would want to know about.
$1 million.
I'm just thinking like 2 nights of a hotel, or you know what I'm saying, like, and
And airfare, I mean, it seems like
I know, what do you say?
$5,000 per person is, I would probably
I
want to
feel-
know if we're spending $5,000 per person.
I-
That's a
My
big
suggestion should be, this should be written in the contract language, not in the policy, right?
Okay.
And so in the policy,
Okay,
you know, you already have reference to the administrator's contract. We have contract language for other administrators. If mine needs to be more clear, right, then we should stipulate that in there, what
like
it is.
that.
I think that's the
Yeah.
right adjustment to make rather than trying to codify it.
And so
here.
we added that
Yes.
sentence about, so it would
Yeah.
comply with the administrator contract. so
Because it spells out in their contract.
it
Right.
does. It
Okay,
sets
then yeah,
limitations
I
of
would
what
say-
of what
Get
they
rid of
can-
it.
Yeah,
what they
let's
do.
make
And
sure.
I think
it's
mine
in.
mostly speaks to reimburse, but if there's
Yeah.
like a notification part, like to Maka's point about making sure we prevent bad behavior, right, then we could easily put in a line about notification for any, you know, travel expenses, overnight stays need to be submitted to the board, something like that. That's easy enough to clean up.
somehow what we'll do is flag that for when you do
Yeah, I'll
your
make a note.
contract.
Yep.
Yeah, but I agree, so that means what are we striking, everyone, from this provision?
Well, this is the first reading, but yeah,
But it is to
That
strike.
last sentence,
The
in that
last sentence,
second
yes.
paragraph.
Okay. Okay. Another good change.
I really hope the public listens to this meeting, which is a thrilling example of our policy work.
I like the boring stuff.
Any other concerns, additions, deletions?
I think people made really good changes, so I appreciate it. Y'all, I mean, Lisa, you did a lot of homework there. Charlie flagged a big one. Good job, everybody.
Great meeting.
No, great.
Yes, team.
Yeah, this is good.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So 200 we proceed and 300
Yes.
we do next time.
yeah, so just to catch JP up, 200 had some changes, but we're going, the motion will be to accept the 200 with changes approved at policy and governance.
And then Kim, when we get 204 online, can we format it so that the
Yep.
font is the same?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Our next policy and governance meeting is Tuesday, November 28th, I believe. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Thank you.